Welcome to another episode of Athens and Jerusalem. Let's begin where we can't escape. Let's begin with Logos.
Now, I would say that this openness, this being in the world, this referring to the world, to objects in the world, what I would like to call self-transcendence, this is disappearing as soon as you project a human being into a lower dimension than its own dimension.
Point of the V goes up to the nuclear explosion that created it.
Tell me this, Dr. Oppenheimer. Do you ever become frightened at what you're finding out here in this area that can't be measured in either time or space?
You see, that's a real point.
Do not be afraid. Open your hearts, open up your hearts.
Open up your hearts to Athens and Jerusalem, the infants of our culture, united, independent, polarized, and even bloody. Athens, the cradle of wisdom and rationality. Jerusalem, the cradle of faith and spirituality. In this podcast, we look at reunion. Could reason be more than modern secular skepticism? And could spirituality be more than belief? Welcome to another episode of the Athens and Jerusalem podcast. In this episode, we have had the pleasure to be visited by Natia Natsvlishvili from Georgia. Welcome to the podcast, Natia.
Thank you.
You made me and told me that you had also been listening to what Cameron was saying about, was it OECD or something? No,
it's UNESCO concept, yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Cameron, for mentioning about global citizenship education concept from UNESCO. I had the pleasure to work on this project for 3-4 years with the from South Korea. And I really liked this concept, and I'm not very optimistic how today's education systems will be able to really implement. But what this concept is having is really special with this social, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral dimensions. So thank you very much for mentioning about this.
No. On the contrary, thank you for. I'm so impressed and so happy to be coming in touch with someone who's worked on that. I know it has been a huge project involving literally hundreds of thousands of people, and wonderful that you're one of them. In fact, that could be one of them, because I think that this whole concept of UNESCO's, not only with global citizenship education, but their whole idea, of the need to transform education so that education can transform the world, is something that is, well, it's very central to what we're discussing. And I think we have tried to sort of introduce a dimension to this discourse that may not be so strongly developed, i.e. the dimension of deeper humanity and the spiritual aspect, together with the more social aspects, and as you said, the cognitive and behavioral aspect.
I think that also brings us very close to the topic what I thought that maybe we could discuss with Natia, and that is how our spirituality motivates our action. And I think it's a very interesting question, and I'm very happy to have you, Natia, together with us. And I know that, I mean, none of us are, we are amateurs.
No, you are philosophers. As you said in one of the episodes, armchair philosophers. So I said I'm not philosopher at all, with or without armchairs. I'm even more amateur. just observer from outside.
But the meaning of the word amateur originally was not someone who doesn't know enough. it was someone who does something out of love for that thing and not because they want to, I don't know, earn money or promote their own position. So in that sense, I think we all are amateur philosophers because we have love for philosophical questions, and we are. Yes, I mean, the two gentlemen besides me are very well versed in these things. I myself um, uh, know very little about this, but yes, like yourself, Nadia, I share that love for these issues. That's, I think, the important thing.
I would say that three of you are like champions. Based on these 26 episodes I was listening to during last few days, I would say that you are the champion. So
Thank you. But I also say that because I met Cameron like nearly 10 years ago, I think, Cameron, and we, the first thing we did was like starting to discuss these kind of questions, and it was very. I felt a lot of resonance with Cameron, and it was very funny to meet a person that we didn't know each other at all, but we would just jumped into all these ground metaphysical questions, more or less. And the funny thing is that when I met you, Natia, also we in a way we start to discuss on an education conference, and then suddenly we were deep into these questions, and so that's also why I thought, okay, I have to invite you on the episode.
I feel endlessly privileged because yeah, this is something really special. Thank you.
We could start to discuss. But how do we understand that spirituality actually motivates our action?
As already said, I'm not an expert at all in this. I'm not a philosopher, but maybe this is the most important what we can do now to clarify how we understand spirituality, what we are putting in this word, because maybe my understanding is totally different, and maybe I'm wrong, or my way of just seeing my own spiritual part is different than yours. But honestly, maybe it's also something naive what I'm saying now. I cannot see a clear, red, specific dividing line between spiritual and non-spiritual parts of my existence. I mean, about my own existence. For instance, I'm seeing in the screen now that I'm moving my hands. And when I'm saying that I'm moving my hand, I'm not specifying that I'm moving my 5 fingers, some muscles inside, some bones inside, nerves, blood, and some other unknown components maybe, and skin over all these components. I'm just saying that it's my hand, and my hand is holding my phone. So this is like synchronized, unified, united product of many other parts. So when I'm thinking about my own existence, the same. It's not the best, it's not even good example what I'm saying, but it is same almost, that there's some part which is not visible, maybe spiritual part, and maybe something other. There's visible part of my existence, but what I believe, we are not only, how to say, privileged species or creatures on this planet having this invisible part of our existence. It's not at all something popular what I'm saying, but other non-human animals also are having this spiritual side of existence. And no matter how we understand spirituality differently from each other, or our understanding is the same, there may be some categories which are, in any case, very explicitly linked to this spiritual part. For instance, love, gratitude, empathy, and kindness. And for instance, one of my dogs, not my dogs, but one of my mother's dog, maybe is kinder, more empathic, and more loving creature than other human beings I met in my life. So this is general, very abstract, very not clear, maybe understanding from my side about spirituality, but this is what I have in my head.
I love those comments, and I resonate very strongly with them. My philosophical training, such as it was as an undergraduate, treated spirituality as something like a different kind of substance from materiality. It was a very kind of Cartesian dualistic framework, was really the only way that spirituality was discussed and then subsequently dismissed. Whereas I think a more, at least for me, a more powerful and convincing way to think about spirituality is not so much as a different kind of stuff, but rather as a kind of direction or orientation of travel, so to speak. And I could reach back to like the ancient pre-Socratic Greek philosophers, and one of the first problems they grappled with was how does the many emerge from the one? And a later Greek philosopher, Plotinus, proposed that everything is coming from the one and returning to the one. And so you have this picture of reality as originating from some unitary principle, and then somehow moving into the realm of multiplicity, and then returning to that unitary principle. And if that's our picture of reality, then spirituality becomes not so much being associated with this non-physical stuff, but rather it becomes a sort of orientation in the world back towards the one. Whereas materiality is an orientation towards the realm of multiplicity. And if that's the way we think of spirituality, then it's far more all-encompassing and doesn't limit itself to the human domain. For instance, as you were saying, you can see spirituality in the animals as well, in their own degree. You can see spirituality in the rocks in their own degree, to the extent to which things are moving from the realm of multiplicity back to the realm of unity. And it strikes me that's the kind of vision the world so desperately needs today, because we seem to have reached the limits of what we can do collectively with more limited visions of what spirituality is, more limited ideas of identity tied to nation, to race, to religion. And we need to forge a much more universal vision of human oneness and human spirituality that is able to encompass the borders of the entire planet. And for that, it requires a real spiritual revolution.
Thinking about spiritual revolution and coming back to my hand, if I have, for instance, deficit of vitamin D or calcium, maybe my muscles are not strong enough. Your muscles are stronger, maybe. Uh, this is the same need for our spiritual part. This part also should be, how to say, skilled or practiced or appreciated, or we need not external vitamins for this, but maybe some specific care or appreciation or time or space or everything together, just to activate this part as well.
Mm.
This what you said about revolution, spiritual revolution, would be kind of based about the need to appreciate, to see, and to practice as part of our existence as well.
Mm.
And that's beautiful. Yeah, I think maybe another analogy that one could use for spirituality, in line with what has been said by both of you, dear friends, is that if we consider that what we call spirit or spirituality has something that is referred to as God, divinity, or a superhuman power and existence as its source, uh, I could imagine that being like a source of light maybe like a sun shining into a room. And in a room, there can be different kind of objects that, due to their construction, have the ability of reflecting the light of that sun or that source of light to different degrees and to in different ways. But the important thing is that each one of them, as you were pointing out, Natia, needs to be sort of polished and cleaned so that it can do that reflection to the ultimate degree that is possible for it. And so whether it is uh, yeah, the sort of the mirror of the human heart, or uh, whether, no, I don't know exactly how we could improve the ability of of a rock or an animal to or maybe actually it might be that those things which are non-human sort of are anyway reflecting that light to the optimal degree that is possible for them. And maybe the issue here, and what makes this especially important for us human beings, is that we are the only creatures known to us, at least so far, that due to our free will have actually the capacity, as you were saying, Natia, to ourselves uh, decide whether we want to uh, cleanse our being and to refine our being so that it can become more spiritual, more reflective of that light. Um, and that's the choice that only we human beings have. I don't know if that resonates with anyone.
I think it resonates, and also I think maybe some would say that religion could be our mirror or our vitamin. And I'm just wondering how we understand spirituality connected to religion.
Mm.
Because I think it's so difficult to nowadays for many of us to actually to be part of a whole what should we say, like a theoretical perspective, which a religion is.
If we think that the goal of spirituality is achieving a larger oneness, and if we agree with the statement that the ultimate goal of this is a kind of global oneness, then individual religions might even seem to be barriers towards that. You know, historically, they've been among the greatest causes of war and unbridgeable conflict between people. And how might one think of religion not so much as a barrier towards achieving this greater vision of oneness, a barrier towards achieving spirituality, but as, you know, as providing spiritual vitamins. You know, what are the spiritual vitamins that religion provides? And I think all of them do at their best do this. All of them give us a kind of orientation towards the one. All of them give us a sense of resonance with the divine in their own culturally appropriate ways. And all of them ask us to go outside of the narrow circle of our own selfish interests to consider the interests of others. Christian love, you know, loving thy neighbor, those sorts of, I think, and the orientation to be of service to others, I think, is one of the greatest inducements of spirituality. You know, just going out of one's way to help someone else opens up one's consciousness to the existence of others, to the well-being of others, to the suffering of others. And the world is in so much need of that today.
Your question about connection between spirituality or our spiritual part and where the religion is also coming from the understanding how we understand religion. Is it something how we see the divine or universal system, order, whatever it is, or how we see ourselves in this system of dogmas and regulations which are built by ourselves with our hands spaced or with the name of God or um, with the power we want to have under this name. And a few days ago, or a week ago, when we were talking, Knut, I shared with you what I had as a first lesson about the universe and about the God in my childhood. And since that moment, I'm thinking that maybe I've never ever learned anything more important than it was that exactly 40 years ago. When I was 4 years old, I was very much amazed, and I still love watching stars and exploring what's happening in the sky. And 4 years old with my father, I was sitting in the summer night in front of our house, and we were watching sky. And my father was just explaining. He was teaching me about constellations. This is Great Bear, and he was explaining all these simplified astronomic components. And I was so happy seeing all this mystery and majestic star, everything. And then we discussed who created this. And my father said that, I said, maybe God created this. And my father said that, what do you think God is? It's not a old man with the gray hair, with the kind face, living in the clouds. It's not that one. God is this natural order, universal order. But in Georgian, we have very interesting word which is translated into English as order. It's not only order. This word contains, together with order, how to say, regulatory balance and rules all together. This is something unconditional order. And he said that it's natural order, it's unconditional, it's universal knowledge, and it's good. And this order is constellation, or in front of us there was very nice tree of hazelnut. And he said that even if it's tree, simple one, this tree is also part of this universal natural order. And he knows how to get back his lovely, nice green dress after winter. So I was completely shocked realizing that this hazelnut tree has this knowledge of universal order or God or everything. So, and after our discussion, Knut, I was thinking if I ever had more valuable knowledge about anything else after that. But no, for me, this is the basic. How we are seeing ourselves in this universal order, which is unconditional, very clever, very organized, very everything positive, but it's our duty to see ourselves in this knowledge and in this order, but we are not seeing this. That's why we need this spiritual revolution or something still, you said. And we are destroying because we don't know, we don't see ourselves in this with this responsibility. We are kind of ignoring our spiritual part, and we are destroying this universe, unfortunately.
It's a beautiful experience to have had at such an early age. The idea of order, I think, is beautifully encapsulated in the Greek word logos, which is which includes the idea of a kind of order suffusing the universe, and which can be seen as both, the laws of nature writ large, throughout the universe, as well as the dispensation of providence. From another angle, you can think of it as God's will in the world. And in the Gospel of John, it begins, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." It becomes flesh. It becomes incarnated in the world. That's that the word for that in the New Testament is logos, but it's the same word that describes this principle of order behind the universe. And it's so beautiful that that you had that experience as a small child, because I think you're ahead of me. I was 6 when my father sort of had that talk with me, looking at the night sky. And I think it always gave me a sense that whatever our conception of God is, um, that our human conceptions of it are far too small to accurately describe what that principle of the one is, what that creative principle is, what that divine principle is, because there's simply too many stars and planets and galaxies out there for it to be compressed into this very human idea that we seem to have about the divine. We personalize it. And maybe we can look at human history and our personalization of the divine, our anthropomorphizing of the divine, our creating God in our image. It says that we're created in God's image, but I think it's equally true to say that we create God in our image.
Mm.
I can have some sympathy for that, actually. I mean, I don't just totally dismiss that as some sort of childish fantasy, because I can see there being a real psychological, spiritual benefit to feeling at one of having a sense of connection with the deity. May be easier if it's conceived as a personal God than if it's some impersonal force out there that's the same force that's causing that's causing the, I don't know, the animals to eat each other and causing disease and all those other things that nature causes. um, I can understand the human wish to personalize and localize that unimaginably vast principle of order within a single figure, within a single dogmatic system. But and that, I think, takes us to a certain point, evolutionarily speaking. But it seems also that point, that this conception of the divine has taken humanity, may have reached its limit. It's been exhausted, because we now are finding us in a world which is limited, and which forces all these different conceptions, all these different dogmatic formulations, all these different religions, to somehow find a way to find some deeper unity behind these dogmatic ideas about the divine, if we're gonna continue to survive on this planet together.
May I
Uh,
just,
yeah,
sorry,
please.
go ahead. No, you go ahead. Go ahead, please, after you.
I'm just I really like the idea that about cleverness, that the universal order is clever, and
Mm.
I think that should be something that we I think the way your father explained it with the hazelnuts, it's very good, and it I think that's something that should be so easily to understand, to
Mm.
show that, okay, these hazelnuts have everything inside them to become a huge, beautiful tree, and
Mm.
this cleverness that is, yeah, for me that's just is so yeah, true.
He said something also very interesting about this hazelnut tree. He said that this tree is part of the universal knowledge and all order, is very knowledgeable, very clever, but also it's very unique. There are thousands, hundreds, or maybe
Mm.
millions of hazelnut trees on this planet, but this one is very different from others. Maybe
Mm.
they have like similar leaves and general appearance, but this one is unique. As you are the unique one, as I'm the unique one. So this was the way to express from my father's side, maybe, that I should respect everything and
Mm.
everybody around
Mm.
me as
Mm.
unique creatures. That, and this was so live, and I was quite shocked realizing that this tree is a unique one. And
Mm.
I,
Mm.
I loved everything he told me then, and I still love. And as I said, I've never ever learned anything more important than this one. happened 40 years ago. I'm continuing, of course, my way to discover this knowledge or order or cleverness or everything, but this was the basic of to respect, to appreciate, to see this uniqueness in every detail. So
I think that's so beautiful, and I would like to offer another analogy that builds on the same principle. I think, and perhaps in some way in order as well. One of my earliest experiences of spirituality had to do when I listened for the first time in my life to a symphony being played out by a symphony orchestra. And since then, I have been thinking that perhaps we could think of if you could use the analogy that, let's say, God is like Johann Sebastian Bach, and he has come with this beautiful composition, and we human beings are all unique instrumentalists, each playing our own unique instrument, and we need to somehow give expression to this beautiful composition. Now, I remember as a young boy when I used to go to classical concerts, I was always puzzled by the fact that there was this man who stood in front of the orchestra and was whiffling around a stick, something that I felt I could do myself. In fact, I used to go home and sort of pretend I was him. And I thought, why does he get all the applause when he was just, just standing there and waving his hand? And it's those, musicians who are actually doing the job. And it took me some time to understand why. And I think that maybe one way that we could look at the role of religion in connection with spirituality is that religion and the founders of great religion, even I would say religious leaders in the best case, are like the orchestra conductor who help us human beings to harmonize our unique human endowments so that we can give expression to that beautiful, majestic composition of love that the Creator has composed for us. Mm. The sad fact is that sometimes the composer, the conductors of the orchestra, when they realize that the musicians follow them very dedicatedly, they become more interested in the power they have over the musicians rather than their ability to help to express the beauty of the composition. And that's when religion, unfortunately, becomes only an instrument of power, yielding power over people. And in the end, the composition is actually spoiled because the conductor wants to have his or her interpretation or expression rather than trying to understand what the composer had in mind. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Analogy is such a deep one, and we can add so many more moving parts to it. One of which is that the point of a symphony is not getting to the end. The point of the symphony is the listening of it, and that I think can say something about about life as well being processed rather than some distinct endpoint. Also, in a great symphony, there are regions of dissonance that are resolved by harmony. It's not just harmony, but tension, clash of instruments, moments of uncertainty are all part of the magic and music of a symphony, just as much as that amazing harmony that fills the space, and that also comes, and hopefully it ends on a note of harmony as well. But all of this is it's a great way of looking at the human condition as a form of music.
Music also is also something very interesting for me, because Stephen, you were talking about creation, how we created God in our imagination, and how we change this direction that we are created by God as His image. But what brings us closer to this divine existence or this divine part of the universe is exactly this way when we are creating something. And personally, for me, the creation of the music is the most difficult and the most mysterious thing in any kind of creation. It's like creation of life, because something unexisted is becoming existed, and we are enjoying, and we have our own way of understandings, and this is purely divine thing maybe. And the process of participating in this as a composer or as a musician or as a conductor or as a listener is also something which brings us closer to this spiritual side of our existence.
Could I also ask you, Natia, because I know that you are a very brave person, I would say. I'm very impressed, and I think you're in a way you are ready to fight for what you believe in. And I'm just wondering.
Very brave sitting here next to you and talking about philosophical components and topics.
That
This
also
is
very
very
brave.
brave.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I also wonder, would you say that you know, in daily life and in what we are doing in life, do our spirituality also motivates or to actually to become more brave or to become more, yeah, you know, to fight for what one believes in?
How spirituality motivates us to make some steps? This is the question, or to
Yeah, I would say to make some steps.
yeah. Behind my back on the wall, you see the picture. It's not visible for our listeners of the podcast, but on this picture, my favorite writer, Julio Cortázar, is sitting next to his cat, Theodor Adorno. Very, very famous name of German philosopher. My knowledge about Adorno is very limited. I know that it was the inspiration of Cortázar to name his cat. And another thing I know about Adorno is the saying. He said that very often we think what motivates us is not what we think is our own. External pressures are main motivators when we are making some steps. This is why I know this quotation. This is my big concern. When we are making steps, when we are making actions, when we are like organizing our everyday life, this is our own choice, our own decisions, or external pressures are making this illusion that, yes, it's me, Natia, and I decided to do this. That's why it's not very clear where is this dividing line of spiritual part of my existence, other, how to say, uninvited actors are coming to my existence and conducting my behaviors sometimes, but maybe it's also our responsibility as humans not to lose, how to say, not control, but focus on our spiritual parts. When I'm saying spiritual part, I mean here not only about abstract. Maybe for some people these are like religious topics or categories. I mean all kind of principles we need to guide our lives or others' lives. This sometimes, I fully agree with you, requires lots of courage to be resistant, not to do what is asked for, I'd say, from outside. it's not always possible to reject these outside external invitations, but unfortunately or fortunately, we live now in this very difficult, complex time when we have luxury to realize what's happening around, but we don't have luxury to be always resistant. I don't know where exactly is my bravery, but I'm really trying to be resistant when something external is coming rudely or without my permission in my existence, which is not always very easy, but I'm trying, and I believe you do the same.
I think there's a very important thing that you're saying, that when okay, this dualism that Stephen was talking about between materialism and spirituality, what you're talking now is also trying to combine the what we often think of as a duality between what is the spiritual part of our existence and our rational part. And I think to understand that our rational part is also part of the universal order and the cleverness, I think that's extremely important if we are to actually to act brave, or to act according to our principles.
When we are talking about having this bravery and strength or resistance to take care of our spiritual side, this also means that I'm taking care of this universal layer of general existence I'm touching. And when I was saying that I don't believe that we are like exclusive species having this spiritual knowledge or spiritual cleverness or being part of this universal cleverness, this also means that it's my responsibility to take care of any component of this cleverness inside me or outside. This is equally difficult when it comes to myself, what's happening in me and what's happening outside. For instance, in our personal life, in our professional life, especially when our professional life contains, how to say, specific responsibilities to take care of others. I'm an educator. Working in education today means that we have to think carefully if this or that compromise was to generally if it's okay to say okay, yes, to this compromise, because mainly in today's education, or I would prefer here to talk about schooling, this individualism or spiritual part of our students and the children are disappearing. It's out of our focus, because all this the system, education system and schooling system became like a mass marathon where individuals are getting lost, and this means that the spiritual parts are also disappearing, and this means that we are saying, I'd say, no to our responsibility to take care of this. I don't know if I answered to your question, not, but this is very complicated to be enough brave to keep this to keep your position in and on this universal layer of universal knowledge or cleverness.
As long as our conception of of humanity and of the universe is that everything is resolved into separate things, we can always think of our own selves as fundamentally disconnected from other selves, and that can naturally lead to a kind of, I don't know, selfish individualism. Whereas if we think of the universe as, going back to this big idea. If you think of the universe as fundamentally coming from one and returning to one, and that all of the apparent separateness of us is really an illusion, that really there are very intimate ties that unite everything around us, the people in our immediate circle, as well as the people on the far edges of the planet that we never see, then our own happiness then becomes intertwined with the happiness of others, and looking to others and helping them out, seeing the potential in others and uplifting that potential and helping to catalyze the achievement of that potential in others, then becomes not merely just a selfless act of just helping others, but it actually, everything, because everything is one, it helps us as well as helps everyone else when we have this attitude of generosity of spirit, and when we have this attitude where the circle of our consciousness goes beyond the limits of our skin.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this connection, something we have, I think, referred to on a few occasions before too. And I think it's such an important theme that it can be repeated. And I think it has to do with, and especially when we're now talking about education, like what is really the purpose of education? Is the purpose of our educational systems today to help us to flourish as human beings, to cleanse that mirror of our inner selves so that it can reflect the qualities and the excellences of humanity and of the spirit that pervades the whole universe in the best possible way? Well, I don't think so. I think the tragic uh, sort of trap into which both society and thereby its educational system has fallen is that we have made human beings into means for something which is not actually at all deeply human, and that is perpetual economic growth. And so we are educating people fundamentally. I mean, there are, of course, these ideas about, I mean, even as UNESCO talks about, and in fact, that's why I find that very, very interesting that they're sort of the attention is to maybe suggest a transformation in this whole way of thinking. But generally, I mean, if you look at the way that national governments motivate why they are putting so much money into education, it's not because they want to have nobler human beings or even necessarily global citizens. They are doing it because they want to make sure that their country can ultimately get a bigger slice of the cake of global economic wealth. And you can do that if you have a well educated workforce, labor force in your country. So we are educating people to become these means for our material prosperity. That's number one goal. Now, other things could be maybe added on the side to it, but this is a number one goal. And I think
And
this
Natia,
is, yeah.
sorry, go
Go ahead.
didn't
No,
mean to
so
interrupt.
I'm just saying that this is where I think, I mean, we start losing our humanity in school.
And Natia, your imagery of life being a mass marathon, I think it's a perfect example of that, where where you throw everyone into this big race, and it's really
Yeah,
not about the individuals. It's about, well, someone's gonna, the fastest person is gonna win, and that's like the idea that we throw everyone into this huge race, not because we value everyone as an end, but we value everyone as a means to some collective end,
exactly.
which is our country, our tribe get some larger slice of a pie, which is seen to be limited. And that was Kant's, the core of Kant's moral philosophy, as I understand it, that
Mm,
individuals must be seen as ends and never as means. And that's such a pervasive thing we find in the world, where people is seen as means. And how do we get to, I guess it begs the question then, how do we get to a society in which individuals are seen as ends and not as means, in which the intrinsic nobility of every individual is at the center of our conception of society. Not that we see everyone as cogs in some big machine. Capitalism seems to run very much against that. The whole structure of capitalism, for all the amazing benefits it's brought us materially, also tends to, I think, reduce the individual to a component in some economic machine.
This is also kind of, I think, social agreement about mass marathoning, because we all agree that we need more or less educated society with more or less basic knowledge of literacy, numeracy, and other fields. And this is also kind of beneficial for everybody when everybody is more or less, let's say, educated. But when we are seeing that individuals are just behind behind the wall, and this process is itself, it's not healthy for individual happiness. As you mentioned, Cameron, it's not possible now in today's education to take care of individuals' happiness. This is something I would say kind of unplugged, excluded from today's schooling. There is no space, there is no time. It's not a problem of curriculum. It's not a problem of content, what we are now teaching to our kids. It's the problem of system itself, because this mass schooling as a structure gives us very busy puzzles with everything, but there is nothing, no space, no time, no resources for individual happiness. I remember myself as a school teacher, how failed I was seeing my students during the lesson. When I had my tasks, I was teaching something. I was trying, of course, to be kind teacher, but I was seeing like uncomfortable movements of one of my students, or like absolutely unusual, different face, and I had no opportunity to just talk and ask what's happening. Are you okay? Or I was seeing myself at the beginning of the lesson, not very ready enough to give the lesson. Because something was happening in my inner spiritual side, maybe. There's no space for individuals from teacher side, from educator side. So this is the marathon for everybody, but it's also very beneficial for everybody because of these economical reasons. Well, because it's less expensive to have this mass schooling than individual tutoring and everything. But so where is the solution? I think what I'm saying now, it's also not very popular, but maybe this development of technologies,
AI.
maybe it's AI, maybe something other is coming, we don't know. Because this is also kind of instinct in ourselves, because we need to be happy, we want to be happy, and we are trying to find the way how to be happy, how to find this more or less peaceful corner, safe corner. Would it be the device, or playing with my friends, or just reading, or just sleeping, or eating, or doing whatever we want to do? But I would prefer to think that we can find the solution, how to not personalized education or schooling process, but to have clearer focus on individuals, to leave the room to invest more in spiritual side, not to talk about on informational level or subject level or whatever it is called in our education systems, but where is human, where is child, where is this exclusive and different part of the existence which needs to be taken care exactly today in my lesson. So
I think that Nadia has brought up an issue which is extremely important and would really require a session of its own. I just wanted to introduce quickly a sort of a, perhaps a new perspective to this, or an additional perspective to this that I think we need to take into consideration, because when we're talking about human happiness, I think we need to take into consideration that human beings are not just human. Okay, what I mean by that is that I think we are partly animal and partly something superior to animals. We have that duality in our existence. Now, I think that if you look at the sort of the logic of the animal kingdom and what leads to what I could call happiness, or anyway progress, or excellence, whatever, it is of course the survival of the fittest, of the best genes. So in the animal kingdom, there is always a battle, and the one that is strongest in terms of physical abilities wins, and that is how it should be. I mean, there's nothing wrong about it. I mean, when a when a stronger animal eats up a weaker animal, there is no hatred or really violence. It's just they're following automatically the way they've been programmed, and everything goes well. But it would seem to me that in the human kingdom, there is actually the reverse principle in operation. Because when we think of those human beings throughout history that we can, I think, quite universally identify as the most developed and advanced human beings, they have been ones who not only have not tried to sort of beat down others and take over from them. They've been the ones who have been willing to sacrifice themselves in order to bring something good to others, to guide them, to help them to develop. So I think in the human realm, uh, happiness or progress or being developed is exactly the opposite of the rule in the animal kingdom. It is that those who are more advanced, they sacrifice themselves, they give away from themselves in order to be able to serve others. And I think that the reason why our current society and educational system still sort of, how to say, attract many people is because they appeal to our animal mechanism, whereas they should be appealing to our truly human mechanism. And I think this is something that we could, as I said, have a whole session about. How can we, what is really human happiness? How can it be achieved, and how can the educational system promote true human happiness, instead of trying to make us into just intelligent animals?
The mode of
I,
cooperation versus competition.
Mm.
but we are also a very competitive species. We do, as I see from maybe from my perspective where I live and what's happening around me, this is exactly the same what you described, Cameron, about animals. The stronger is trying to dominate, to get the power to eat the weaker, maybe not to eat, but to, how to say, corner or to do something not very good. But this is also the same algorithm, what's happening in this animal kingdom. That's why
Absolutely.
I feel that we are not superiors. Maybe we have some skilled parts or some more developed skills than other non-human animals are having, but they also have something what we don't have. For instance, I'm always as a child, I'm always like surprised thinking how migratory birds are able to find their homes when they are getting back to for instance, to our house. I don't remember the name of this very lovely black bird, maybe swallow.
Swallow, yeah.
Swallow, yeah. They are flying when the winter is starting to warmer countries, and when spring is coming, they are coming back, and they are able to find without any map, without any GPS, without anything. They have this knowledge how to find. It's not intuition, it's a knowledge, it's universal cleverness, how they can get back to their homes. And it's also something very joyful. They are able to find their home. So I'm not sure that we are superiors. Maybe there are other small ones, viruses, microbes, more knowledgeable than we are, but we are operating with these same cruel rules than other animals. Unfortunately, this is our this is the result we are having now based on our maybe mistakes during centuries and centuries. I don't know.
What I find interesting is that I often think that we are actually able to think how we could create a good society, more or less, but still
Theoretically.
theoretically,
Yeah.
that we really have our mind. I mean, we have really developed our society in a way that could have been a good society, but then we are not able to. I mean, it's like Cameron was talking about the conductor and how they when they get into power, then something is happening with us that we don't really. Okay, what was it I'm really thinking about, and then we destroy the theory in practice. And maybe some of it is the reason, the difference between theory and practice also. I'm not sure. One of the discussion about school, and I talked about AI. I was just wondering, because I think a lot of schooling today is actually we are trying to keep the students doing what AI actually could have done for us, or maybe could do for us in the future. So in my hope is, of course, that okay, maybe we could have a more spiritual, a more humanized schooling, and let AI do the job of, I mean, the competition and the global economy idea, and then we could just have more conversations like this in school also.
I don't know, when I was in grade school, and calculators were still kind of a cool new thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we still learned how to add and divide and multiply, even though we had calculators that could do it for us, because there's a benefit, I think, to be had having numeracy, even though you could always rely on the clutch of a calculator. And so, 40 years on, we have these more powerful calculators. We call them chatbots, and they can undertake a wider range of calculations for us, taking language, converting it into numbers, and then spitting out other words. But won't there always be a usefulness to learning about the nuts and bolts of things, even though the AI is going to do it better than every single individual on the planet? Do we let go of those core competencies entirely in favor of something that we think, only humans can do? I don't know.
I think you are correct, Stephen, but that, maybe because I think what we are saying and what we are feeling is that this component of facts and information and this kind of knowledge and scientific knowledge has been the only dimension in school. So maybe we could have more of have both of them. But of course, I won't let go of information and facts either.
I love this example Cameron gave us about conductor with this magic stick. I would say that even if AI will do all this technical job, we would need this conductor's magic stick to organize this education process cleverly, because it's also the question how new instruments will be used. For what would be the main reason, the purpose of any kind of instrument existing or coming tomorrow? That's why this magic stick of Cameron's conductor would be very much needed in any case, because AI is like a clever calculator. It is a tool, it's an instrument. Even if it looks like more humanized, asking how do you feel today, or do you like my answer, or something like this, it's still the instrument. That's why I don't know in which kind of hands we need to have these magic sticks, but yeah, it's also our responsibility to think about this.
Yeah, and it's a moral question, and I think we need to have a more moral education. And I'm just wondering, because it's so difficult to learn or to teach moral. Yeah, so that's also maybe we should have a episode on.
Yeah, truly. I mean, because I think any manner of helping people achieve knowledge, the question that could and should be posed is, why should we learn this? Why should we teach this? In what way does this contribute to the true development of human beings as humans? And I have a friend. She's a mathematics teacher, and she gave recently an interesting talk at an international conference about how mathematics can help us develop our souls. And I think that even as a question is very, and I think, yes, if mathematics doesn't help us develop our souls or our spirituality, then the question is, what really do we do with it? And now, ultimately develop our, I'm not saying that we don't need mathematics, maybe, to build our houses or whatever, that is needed too. But ultimately, it should also, even the fact that we live in houses should be so that it gives us the possibility of then being able to develop as human beings. Because if everything that we do just helps us be intelligent animals, then I think that we have somehow really sort of lost view of and spoiled, given away what is most precious about us. And I'm not saying this because I'm sort of anti-animals or whatever. As I said, I think animals do what they do, from migratory birds to dogs or whatever. They are programmed. They're like this laptop in front of me now. They're programmed to do certain things in a perfect way, and they do it. They have no choice. They have no free will. But we as human beings have all of this. So we need to somehow raise ourselves above that animal aspect in ourselves and make that animal aspect just to function so that our humanity can then flourish. And I think this might be an important issue to discuss in a future program about how can education, as you were saying, Natia, earlier on, how can it contribute towards our human flourishing, our human happiness, whatever word we want to use.
Talking about mathematics and happiness, one very small but very lovely example from a short movie which is published on YouTube. American journalist is traveling to Finland with the idea to discover what is behind of this secret of being the world's best education provider country. And it's a 10 or 9 minutes movie, but with very interesting messages. And he is traveling, visiting some schools, so visiting the Minister of Education, having some interviews with school directors, kids. So he's trying to find what is the golden key, why Finland is having the best education system in the world. And he has a meeting with the teachers in the school, and he asked the question, what is your goal? What would you like you gentleman, mister, to teach? What is the idea? What you want to teach your students? And one gentleman says that he wants to teach students how they can be happy persons, how they can respect others, respect themselves. And the journalist is asking, what the hell you are teaching? And he's saying that I'm a math teacher. So the face he's having is completely shocked and very interesting. All is about priorities. Even if I'm a sports teacher or math teacher, what is my priority?
Could I just, maybe I could say something, because in my opinion, mathematics is our ability as human, is one of the abilities of as human to actually understand or to feel the universal order, the cleverness of the universal order. And that, to me, mathematics is some kind of part of this, of my soul and my ability, my inner eye to actually to be part of the universal order. And there's a funny story. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's written in one of the letters of Plato. He was a supervisor for one of the tyrants at Sicily. He said that there was no way that he was able to bring or to give this tyrant what he needed to become a good tyrant. And the reason was that he was not interested in mathematics. So because he didn't do the studies Plato was giving him in mathematics, he had no way he could become a good tyrant. And I think that's a very important, that is not happiness. The best way to become happy is to do mathematics.
And that means being curious. Yeah. There has to be a degree of curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah, and we are driven by curiosity as human animals. So this is also the easy way to get closer to mathematics, I hope.
And if because we started to talk about spirituality that motivates action, and then we ended up in mathematics, and it's very interesting because then we could say that, okay, doing mathematics actually do something with our action too. If we actually feel mathematics as something that is part of our soul and of the universal order. So maybe that could be like the end of the episode. I think so. Thank you very much for listening, and see you next time.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Athens and Jerusalem, created by Cameron Namdar, Stephen Phelps, and Knut Ove Essay. Nora Juel is the broadcast voice and technical support. Music is pieces of Edvard Grieg's Morning Mood. The voices in the intro are Viktor Frankl, interview with Robert Oppenheimer and Pope John Paul II. Thank you for listening, and please check out another episode.